Surprisingly, one thing that we have never done on this channel is carving out the top entry-level mechanical offerings of every watch style. So what we're gonna be doing in this video is to provide a greatest hit list of 3 or so watches under $1,000 in each category and give reasoning for their inclusion. The categories will be as follows. First will be everyday watches, number 2 will be field watches, 3 looking at the dress category, 4 GMT watches, 5 dive watches, and then 6 will be our wild card, more of our catch-all of other considerations that are worthy of mention when looking at this pricing arena. So to simplify this, we are not going to open up the can of worms and looking at micro brands here. However, if that is more of your speed, I will link to a recent video where we built 5 unique collections only using micro brands. One of my favorite videos that we've done as of late, so definitely check that out. And also we'll have a link below in the description to our comprehensive guide to micro brands on our website, including over 70 names to know, freshly updated for 2024 as well. So now let's kick things off with our everyday category. And what I'm looking for here is a watch that can be 100 meters of water resistance ideally, and then also versatile looks. Casual as well as dressier scenarios could work in both of these circumstances. Looking at watches under $1,000, I want to start here with one from Seiko. This is the Seiko SRPE 5-3. So this is not the only sole watch you can look at within this collection. This is informally known as the Dress KX, not a phrase that Seiko is ever going to use in their terminology, but something that many enthusiasts will bring up when looking at these watches. And the reason for that is they take a lot of the identity of the case silhouette of the former SKX, as well as some of the other Seiko 5 sports watches that follow that DNA. Case diameter comes in at 40 millimeters, 11.5 millimeters in thickness, pretty compact lug to lug of 44.6 millimeters. I would say this one wears closer to that of a 38 millimeter case. It's not going to be a very large watch on the wrist. 4R36 movement on the inside. You have mineral crystal on here as well. Does have that lack of a rotating bezel, is a bit quirky with the 4 o'clock crown position, but I would say this is suitable enough for hitting this circumstance of an everyday watch. Plus the lume is fantastic. It does look pretty sharp when you pair this with the right strap configuration, as well as looking great on the bracelet. And for under $300, very tough to beat. For the second of 3 watches we're going to have in the everyday category, the next one is going to come from Swiss brand Tissot. I have spoken about this watch a lot. This is the Tissot Gentleman Powermatic 80. This has now become more of the sleeper pick compared to the Tissot PRX. And I think there's reasons why you maybe look in this direction compared to it. Not to say that it's a better watch than the PRX, but there's a lot going for it as well. 40 millimeter diameter, so familiar with many of the other watches that you'll find from Tissot. That's a common size that they'll throw out there. 11.6 millimeters in thickness and a lug to lug of 48.6 millimeters. So I would say this wears like its full size, if not slightly larger. This is not a small watch, so just keep that in mind. Some might call it a little bit generic looking, which could be fair, but if you are just looking for your first proper watch under $1,000, this is going to cover you in many, many circumstances. Also on the inside, you're getting the C07.811 caliber from the Powermatic family. So that is the silicon balance spring version, the higher grade version of the Powermatic movements. One of the only times in Tissot's entire collection that they do this. You also have some great looking faceted indices on these watches with different dial colors to choose from. You have the dark blue, the green, the black, and then also an ice blue. Now for the final watch in the everyday category, we're looking at the Hamilton Khaki Field Murph at 38 millimeters. I don't know if there's a more complete everyday watch under $1,000 than that of the Murph. One of the questions some people might be having is why is this not in the field category? You probably could fit this into both the field category and the everyday category, but the reason I wanted to put it here instead is you have some polished elements of the case, no 24-hour military markings like other khaki models, and its field adjacent type of styling doesn't overpower other elements of the winning package. The success of the Hamilton Murph can't be fully associated with its affiliation with the field watch design that come from Hamilton, but also its affiliation with the film Interstellar. The reason why it succeeds is because it is just a phenomenal watch. 100 meters of water resistance, a wearable case at 44.7 millimeter on that lug to lug with the 38 millimeter size, 11.1 millimeters in thickness. These are solid dimensions across the board. C07.611 caliber on the inside, 80-hour power reserve, sapphire crystal, cathedral handset, is also a bit more elevated, I would say, compared to some of the other khaki field models. Also those stylized numerals, the polished points on the case, it's a timeless looking design. So now we transition to the actual field watch category, and where I want to start here is looking at a brand that I don't think is given enough credit when it comes to this whole arena of field watches, and that is Bulova, looking at the Hack watch from the brand. So these have prices that are going to be at the entry door for a mechanical field watch with a brand that has true heritage in this department. These are at 38 millimeters with the diameter, 47 millimeter lug to lug, a little bit thicker given the Miyota caliber on the inside. This is the 82S0. Since these are the Hack watches, they obviously are going to hack. Great retro vibes with historical provenance with these pieces. And along with brands like Hamilton and Elgin, Bulova was one of the largest producers of military timepieces for the US military during World War II. At the time, having a hacking feature of the second hand was very important for coordinated efforts on the battlefield as well. You have the 12 and 24-hour scales for easy reading of military time, no date for great symmetry, and a dome crystal that nails that vintage look. So this next piece is one that I think some might question whether or not, why is this in the field category? I think it belongs here. It might not be the watch that people think of when thinking of this collection, but we're looking at the Baby Alpinist, the SPB 155. So there were a few different Baby Alpinist models that were released, but the only one that remains now is this SPB 155 with its green dial. The others have been discontinued. So if you want to get into the Baby Alpinist, this is where you go. 38 millimeter case, so smaller than that of other Alpinist models, 12.9 millimeters in thickness, and a lug to lug of 46 millimeters. But just because this is going to have a smaller case doesn't mean that it's taking away from some of the areas that people love when it comes to specifications. 200 meters of water resistance, more than what you'll ever need. Automatic 6R35 on the inside, so a bit elevated, and actually at the entry point where you're going to be able to get into these movements with those 70 hours of power reserve. Sapphire crystal on top, so no hard lex here. And some might argue with me in saying that this is not a field watch. This was made for Japanese mountaineers, and this isn't necessarily the watch that I think of when thinking of the Alpinist, but I like this colorway and how it evokes this feeling of the explorer field watch genre. And then for the final watch in the field category, this absolutely needs to be on here. This is the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. Different than the Murph by a wide margin in a variety of ways. One is going to be how the case is going to present itself. A little bit longer with the lugs, intended for more pull-through style straps, 38 millimeters, 9.5 millimeters in thickness, thanks to that manual wound caliber on the inside. That's the H50 on the inside, and ETA 2801-2 base on that. Sapphire crystal, different case options to choose from. You have a bronze case, as well as the black PVD case. You have this blasted stainless steel that I have on my wrist right now. But we've talked about the history of Hamilton field watches. If you want to get to the core of where all that stems from, this is the design style that you can look at in the contemporary collection that is going to uphold those principles the best. Now we shift to the dress category, and the first series of dress watches that come to mind when I think under $1,000 that I would recommend, it's the Seiko Presage Cocktail Times. These are a great middle ground of value, finish for the dollar amount, as well as just looking so damn good. These can commonly be found for $350, $400, depending on what version you're going for. There are some different case options available to you, but most people are going to look at the 40.5 millimeter. That is the conventional size. You have this domed effect of the entire case, but as well as that Hardlex crystal. I know people are hard on the Hardlex crystal, but I guarantee if they put a sapphire on this, it would not look nearly as good as it does with this. Water resistance still pretty decent at 50 meters for a dress watch. Automatic 4R35 on the inside. These were originally designed in 2010, and they were designed in partnership with a Tokyo mixologist from Shibuya that was designing all of these watches based on Japanese cocktails. You have this rib finish effect that spans much of the entire collection. Gorgeous dials across the board with their colorways, but also with their details as you get up close. So the Orient Bambino probably deserves to be on this list under $1,000, but I want to look at a newer version of the Orient Bambino because I think these look fantastic. It's not the first time that they've used this layout, but it's the first time in this case format. This is the Orient Bambino Small Seconds 38 millimeters. So this takes the 38 millimeter case platform from the brand and infuses a romantic and classic looking layout for the Small Seconds. You have a 38.4 millimeter case, thickness of 12 millimeters, lug to lug of 44 millimeters, and then an automatic F622 caliber on the inside. This is a 2024 release. You have 4 different versions to choose from across this line. You have 4 primary versions to go for. You have a cream dial, a silver dial, a black dial, and then also a gold tone case version. Dimensions on these are quite solid. One of the downsides of some of those Bambinos is that at 40 millimeters with that large dial opening, they might appear a bit too large on certain people's wrists. If you're going for that elegant, understated dress watch, you will not have an issue with that here. And speaking of not appearing too large, that is absolutely the case with this next watch. This is the Timex Marlin 34 millimeter hand wind. When this was unveiled in 2017, this changed the complete trajectory of Timex as a brand. There were not many mechanical offerings from Timex, even at this price point. Think about at the time of 2017. I know everybody now is all about smaller case sizes, but a 34 millimeter case to just drop that from a brand like Timex in 2017, that took some foresight, and they were able to see where things were going, and they were able to carve this new lane for their brand to execute time after time as years have gone on. Another thing I appreciate about this watch is it upholds the look and feel of a vintage watch. You might even be mistaken, depending on which version you're going for. Is this a contemporary watch or is this a vintage watch? That's both on size but also style. Also one of the most inexpensive manual wound watches that you'll find for this price range, around $200. Now shifting to GMT watches, I have two different ones I want to talk about, and it's based on different movements that change the game, really. There's no other way around it. First is the Seiko SSK GMT with the 003, but you also have the 001 and the 005. Obviously now, Seiko's gone crazy with releasing many different variations of the SSK GMTs with their multiple colors in their bezel. You have a Batman version, a black and gray, orange dial, a yellow dial, Pepsi chapter ring version, two-tone styles, and a lot more. So a lot to get lost in, but these watches changed the game when it came to GMTs available under $1,000 and under $500 at that. 42.5 millimeter case, so familiar with the whole Seiko 5 Sports family. 13.6 millimeters in thickness, lug to lug of 46 millimeters. So these wear like 40 millimeter watches on your wrist. Get 100 meters of water resistance. And what completely was a trailblazing feat was the unveiling of the 4R34. This has now become available to other third-party brands and micro brands. So you're starting to see it available more often, but where did it all begin? It began with these watches, and they look simply fantastic. The one other watch I want to include in the GMT category is Bulova's Wilton. So this came out slightly after the 4R34 movement with the Miyota 9075. This, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the first appearance in the US market that you saw this caliber being utilized. And this changed the game because this is not only going to make available GMTs in a mechanical form under $1,000, but how about Traveler True GMTs under $1,000 while operating at 4 Hertz? This was one of the most important movements ever produced in the last 5 years. The case size is 43 millimeters, not the smallest in that regard, especially for a watch of this styling. 49.5 millimeters with the lug to lug, still reasonably wearable across the wrist. You have that 4 Hertz Miyota 9 series caliber on the inside, sapphire crystal. You have the blue dial version as well as a gold tone version. Moving along to the dive category. This is going to have the most watches mentioned in a single category because, quite frankly, there are so many dive watches that you could mention. I'm looking at the greatest hits here though, so we can't get too crazy. One I have to start with, this is the Seiko Turtle, the SRPE 93. This represents one of the most iconic cases in Seiko's history. The Turtle case, you have roots going back to the mid 1970s with the 6309. It also fills the void left by the SKX as an ISO compliant dive watch with pretty wearable dimensions. I know that might sound crazy with a 45 millimeter case, but trust me, just try this one on. 47.7 millimeters lug to lug, reasonable thickness for a watch that's going to have 200 meters of water resistance, 4R36 movement on the inside, Hardlex mineral crystal, black dial. I don't know why this watch works as well as it does on so many different wrists, but it is a bit of an enigma. Its case silhouette is broad, but it still looks amazing when you strap it onto the wrist for the first time, and will continue to look great as you strap it on time and time again. So this is going to be a Seiko that shoots up closer to $1,000, but it combines many traits of the Turtle as well as the Willard. This is going to be known as the Slim Turtle. The Slim Turtle is its informal name. It also goes by the formal name as the SPB 317. So this comes in with a case size of 41 millimeters, thickness of 12.5 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug of 46 millimeters. So all around, one of the more mid-sized dive watches from Seiko, under $1,000. It probably doesn't get talked about enough. 200 meters of water resistance, ISO-compliant dive watch. You're also getting the 6R35 movement with that 70-hour power reserve compared to those 4R calibers that we mentioned earlier with the Turtle. So we're all familiar with watches over $1,000 from Seiko, like the SPB 143, but what if you wanted to split the difference between the previously mentioned Turtle and something like those 62 Mas reinterpretation models? This is right there. So now we shift over to Switzerland. We're going to be looking at Certina with their DS Action 38. There are several different Certina watches that you can mention here. We want to mention, though, something within the DS system. So the DS system was introduced in 1959. It stands for double security. It's a shock-absorbing ring around the movement. And this was one of the ways that Certina was able to establish themselves as a trusted source for dive watches and many other watches that can be able to take a beating. They also incorporated their water sealing crown system. And this all led to the US government's Tektite underwater habitat trials in 1969 and 1970 to use Certina watches. This was a whole initiative that had oversight by NASA, of all organizations, because they wanted to see what would happen in an isolated environment as people were living in these underwater habitats and how this could have some learnings that could be adapted to space. Certina watches were also worn by Royal Australian Navy clearance divers during the 1970s, but this version is available that we're looking at, the DS Action 38. At 38 millimeters, I think it's a great size, and one of the first brands that I saw starting to play around with this case size years ago. 12.2 millimeters in thickness, lug-to-lug of 44.9 millimeters. You have C07.611 on the inside, 80 hours of power reserve. Certina also has no watch in their entire collection. Every watch, I should say, in their collection has at least 100 meters of water resistance. So you know what you're getting into. Robust watches, produced under $1,000. This one right around $800. Pretty hard to beat for these prices. So we go from Japan to Switzerland, back to Japan with Citizen's ProMaster Fugu. So Fugu is Japanese for pufferfish, and this was released originally back in 1989. Just for context, this is 7 years before the Seiko SKX. This is one of the legends of affordable dive watches out of Japan. The Fugu has been used in both recreational and professional settings, including being used by Italian Navy Special Forces units. It's an ISO-rated dive watch. The lume is some of the best in class you're going to come across. Miyota calibers on the inside, very legible, multiple versions to choose from, including a full lume dial to go along with those. And for years, it was not available outside of Japan until becoming more available in 2022 as they started to extend it to different markets around the globe. And then for the final watch in the dive category, we have the Tissot Seastar 1000 at 40 millimeters. The Seastar is the long-standing collection, one of the most famous and well-known names in Tissot's entire catalog. It has gone from dress pieces to quirky pieces throughout the mid-20th century, but now it represents more of the sports category for Tissot, specifically the dive category. Now for years, the Seastar was available at 43 millimeters, and also you saw the Seastar 2000, which was more their professional grade version of the Seastar, at 46 millimeters, so not small watches. These are going to be more of their mid-sized version of that at 40 millimeters. So if you want something that's a little bit smaller, dive watch from Switzerland that maybe doesn't get as much love as it deserves, this should be right up your alley. 40 millimeter in this case size, 12.5 millimeters in thickness, and a lug-to-lug of 46 millimeters. Also 300 meters of water resistance. You have the Powermatic 80 caliber on the inside, sapphire crystal. Peculiar note about these is they do have a mineral cap bezel insert, but these are coming under $800, some different dial options to choose from. My favorite is this greenish blue teal dial version, and you'll also notice if you look up close, pretty interesting texturized surface as well. So now we move to the wildcard category, and this watch needs to be on here. This is the Tissot PRX. Has there been a watch under $1,000 that has gotten more attention than the Tissot PRX in the last 5 years? Probably not, but that's for a reason. This is a watch that has changed the game. It was a benchmark for the attainable integrated sports watches that since we've seen so many different brands try to follow and try to crack the code of what has made the Tissot PRX so successful. You have the Powermatic 80 movement on the inside, a wide array of different dial colors to choose from, and you get two different case sizes, 35 millimeters and 40 millimeters. 100 meters of water resistance across the board, sapphire crystals, and pretty wearable dimensions with finishing on the bracelet in the case that allowed it to set a standard for what an integrated steel sports watch should be under $1,000. There have been many attempts to dethrone the Tissot PRX. The one that has gotten the closest is this one. This is the Citizen Ciosa Small Seconds. The Small Seconds version I want to specify here because this is where they took it another step up. If you look at the base models, I think those were a nice entry point into the integrated realm, but I think these are going to deliver on many fronts to allow it to get more into the same conversation of that of the PRX. You're getting a case size of 40 millimeters, but wears, I would say, more compact across the wrist, given how the bracelet is going to integrate into the case and be more fine with its links. One of the challenges I have with this watch is it's only 50 meters of water resistance compared to 100 meters. You're also getting a Miyota 8 series movement on the inside. One of the benefits of that movement is that it extends the power reserve compared to some of the other 8 series calibers from Miyota. So 60 hours of power reserve, that's a 50% increase compared to the original Ciosa models. With its case, it definitely is going to evoke a bit of oyster quartz in its design. The dial is going to have this guilloche texture to it, obviously achieved by press, but nevertheless looks the part. And then for the final watch in our wildcard category, we have the Seiko Alpinist SPB 121. There's probably not a watch this popular that is as weird as the Alpinist SPB 121. Like, let's just talk about what these features are. You're looking at a dual crown design, internal compass bezel, green dial, gold accents, cathedral hands, 200 meters of water resistance. This watch is so strange, it's quirky, but it's capable on delivering what I would think many collectors are looking for when they have a budget around $700. This is the modern successor to the 2006 release that was the SARB 017. It was a watch that was discontinued around 2018, and then here comes the SPB 121 in 2020. Takes a lot of the history in the field explorer genre of the Laurel Alpinist of 1959s worn by Japanese mountaineers. On one side, you have this weird presentation, but then you get to the logical point of view of why this watch works, and it starts to make sense. 200 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal, 6R35 movement with that 70 hours of power reserve, and the lume is maybe the best you're going to come across of a watch of this styling. And even with that styling, with the cathedral hands, there is almost this elegance to it, which allows it to be more versatile than you might expect when you think about an internal compass bezel and dual crowns. Simply put, there is no other watch like the Alpinist SPB 121. But all right, guys, that's our video here today, looking at some definitive watches in every category under $1,000. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Is there a watch that you would also consider here that was not mentioned in one of these categories? Leave some comments down below. If you also own any of these watches, love to hear some ownership stories as well. Definitely check out TeddyBaldestar.com, full authorized dealer of over 30 brands. Every watch on TeddyBaldestar.com comes with a full factory warranty, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support. Also, if you have any questions, reach out to us on live chat. We are there 18 hours a day. We have people on our team, coast to coast, ready to answer questions about any watch that you see on our website, so take advantage of that. Also, if you want to support the content here, the best way to do that is by purchasing a watch. If you are in the market for a watch, we'd love to have your business. Allow us to keep doing what we're doing here. We love what we do. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.